Alabama, the 30th largest state and the 24th most populous, is located in the southern region of the U.S. It borders these 4 other states and the sea. 67 counties form the inner borders, except for this bit right here, which is an Indian reservation and does not fall under the state's jurisdiction, but rather is under a joint agreement with the federal government. The capital city, Montgomery, is located right here. However, the economic and urban center of the state is Birmingham, which is nicely situated at the end of this plateau. This area is an extension of the Appalachian Mountains, and its elevation decreases as we approach the coast, down from 2,400 feet to sea level. It is also worth noting that 70% of the state is covered by forests, with these rivers constantly draining in different directions. 2 of these rivers have their mouths on the Mobile Bay, home to the oldest city in Alabama. This city holds a very strategic place, which is why it was the capital city of the French colony of Louisiana. And even though nowadays it is only the 12th largest port in the U.S., it still holds an important role in Alabama's trade. By the way, in 2019, Alabama's top export was cars, representing 32% of all trade, having Canada as its top destination. You might think that the top export would have been cotton, right? After all, it is called the Cotton State. But it is called that because cotton made Alabama. It lured Americans to flood the region and grow the crop, leading to a push for statehood. And today, long after cotton abdicated its status as king of the state's economy, there are still Alabamians who grow it for buyers all over the world. Now, if you are planning on visiting this beautiful state, you have these U.S. highways and these interstate highways available. Distances are quite close. For instance, a trip by car from this state border to the city of Dothan wouldn't take more than 5 hours. If you prefer air travel, you could take a trip to one of these airports, the busiest being the one in Birmingham, serving regional destinations as shown. Alabama, as we know it today, has been around since 1819, but people have inhabited this area since way earlier. Let's jump to the year 1000. The area was unknown to everybody in the world but the native communities nearby. At first, they were just hunters and gatherers, but as years went by, they evolved into bigger societies that shared similar traditions. They were called the Mississippian people. They had already begun to decline, however, by the time the Spanish came in 1540, and were reduced to these tribes, which were constantly under threat of European assaults and diseases. By the beginning of the 1700s, the first European settlers, the French, came to what is now Alabama, and they ruled part of it for about half a century, until the British took control of the colony after winning a war back in Europe. That control would only last a few years, though, due to the 13 colonies declaring independence and fighting the war that would eventually give them all of this land. Alabama in particular was an extension of the Georgia state, and you could distinguish 3 regions. This one right here belonged to the United States. This region over here was claimed by both the US and Spain. And this bit down here was part of the Spanish colony of La Florida. It took almost 15 years for the Spanish to renounce their claims over this area, and 2 years later, it became the territory of Mississippi, although it still had internal disputes with the neighboring state of Georgia due to some massive real estate frauds it had committed in order to expand its own territory within the US. Don't worry though, it got settled a few years later when Georgia ceded its western half to the federal government, leaving this part as unorganized territory. But disputes weren't over, especially after the Louisiana Purchase. The US believed that what they had acquired from France included all these lands. Spain disagreed, and they maintained tense relations for a decade, until the US got fed up and took them by force, specifically acquiring this bit in 1813. By this time, this top and bottom part had already been declared part of the Mississippi Territory, and Spain only agreed to all of this decades later by ceding all of Florida in exchange for a demarcated border with the Spanish colony of Mexico in the west, even though Alabama had already become the 22nd state in the US 2 years earlier. So finally, Alabama was its own place, with a peaceful path ahead, right? Right? Well, no, because in 1861, Alabama proclaimed its secession from the Union, along with the other Confederate states, as a response to Abraham Lincoln being elected and later abolishing slavery. The Confederacy, however, lost the Civil War in 1865, and ever since then, they have been there for all Americans. Which state should we do next? Comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to keep them coming. Thank you for watching.